week 45 of the crafting concept, and this week is a double header. This week's going to roll into week 46 because it's that important that we design the correct expectations to shape learning in our instructional environments, be that out on the sports field or in the classroom or in any kind of corporate setting. The expectations we set to our learners, to those that we're working with, to those that we're trying to inspire with new learning to be more creative, shaping what that learning looks like and making sure that there is precise, present and predictable instruction is that essential that I'm dedicating 2 weeks worth of material to it. This is going to be based primarily around the big 8 factors when it comes to designing the correct kind of expectations of learners in the environment. Of those 8, I'm going to cover 4 this week and 4 next week. So stay tuned and watch out. Really effective instruction is not necessarily defined by what we say, just by what we say. It's defined by what learners perceive. What do they take from the instruction? What do they take from that moment you blow the whistle and you're going to say something? What do they take from the tactics board, from that analysis that you're doing, game, post-game, whatever it is? Every moment of teaching in a classroom or coaching on the sports field is shaped by an ecosystem of expectations. To them to you, you to your other staff to them. These are the daily, hourly, even by the minute signals, routine and cues that tell your learners what matters, what is going to matter most for the next 5 minutes, for the next 1 hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. It tells them when to act, when to do the thing, and when to listen to your modelling, when to listen to your voice, when to observe your demonstration. And most of all, it instructs and prompts them how to think, how to apply their working memory in such a way that they are going to learn from this experience. The most effective instructors design these moments intentionally. They are cognizant of the big 8 and thoughtfully apply them across every single time they coach, put the whistle in their mouth, or have the pen in their hand in the classroom. So what are the big 8 that are going to take 2 weeks worth of material for me to discuss? They are cueing, tasking, giving attentional prompts, setting time limits, the transition between different activities, your physical positioning as the instructor, checking for readiness, checking for understanding, for listening in your learners, those checkpoints, and finally, reinforcement. They are the big 8. So throughout week 45, we're going to be focusing on cueing, tasking, attention prompts, and time limits as the first of the 4 big 8 elements of designing the correct kind of expectation of your learners in your classroom environment, on the sports field, in your coaching environment. They're not just really about the way you control the group, but are about clarity, about alignment, the expectations, the understanding, the commitment, the contract between you, instructor, and them, learners. They know what to expect from you, and you give them just that and create that psychological safety to be able to learn, thrive, develop, grow, and perform. When these 8 factors are crafted with precision, with thought, and coherently applied, there's going to be a safety, a rhythm to the environment that promotes flow in your learners, promotes focus in your learners, and engages them to the highest level. First up then, we have cueing being that kind of subtle signal that directs attention. Something that you've considered preempted as an invitation for your learners to think or to act, do, solve a problem, act on a demonstration. It's the kind of thing that in a classroom sounds like, when I say go, you're going to discuss that solution with your partner. The cue tells those learners that that instruction needs to end with some kind of action. I am saying something and you are going to do something. I'm cueing you, priming you to listen for that moment that I say, when I say go, you're going to do it. In sport, that might sound something like, as on the rugby field, as soon as that defender turns his hips, then you're going to execute and step and go the other way, drive into the space. So it's when X, then perform Y. There's observe something, see that learning in action, and then action, boom, do something immediately. That is your cue. It's time for you to act. No different to in a dramatic performance or in theatre studies, the cue being the previous dialogue that's gone on between two other characters, or the that one character says that means enter scene for you. It's exactly the same. The cue preempts an action. Therefore, those cues create a sense of readiness, alertness. So they shape behavior and can manipulate the response. That sounds almost like operant conditioning, like a Skinnerism psychology performance of the stimulus being the cue and the response being your action. But what they do is they replace a sense of what do I do, what's my trigger, with direction. And then the consistency of performance around that cue. When the centre half plays it out to the wide man, then that's your cue to jump and go and press. And we're going to practice that, and we're going to automate it and make your response become instinctive. Then we're freeing up working memory, because once that cue utilization, that recognition of a cue becomes honed, grooved, and autonomous, then it's not in working memory. It's just happening. It's in flow. It's a movement condition that has been embedded into the long-term memory. That means that all you have to do is recognize the cue, and then the action speaks for itself. The same goes in a classroom environment. If the cue is a certain command word, when you see compare and you know that that's worth 2 marks, you need to make 2 different comparisons. That's 4 points. I'm working on this kind of stuff constantly in my classroom. Cue utilization. What is it that you see in the question? We might call this bugging the question. It's quite a typical term in the education setting. Box the command word, underline the key features, and then glance at the whole question to see how much space you've got to write the answer, how many marks it's worth, etc. This is a form of cue utilization. You're recognizing the cue, being the command word expected of you, and then the response is, oh, it's evaluate. It's worth 6 marks. I need to give positive and negative points. Because it's worth 6 marks, I know that there's probably going to be a submax of 4 and 2. Can I plan for 4 positives or 4 negatives? Brilliant. I've got 3 and 3 actually, so that's fine. The point being, the cue was the question, the cue was the command word, the action is what you do next. The second of our big 8 features for designing the correct expectations in your environment is tasking. So describing what learners are going to be doing and why they're doing it. It's more than just an instruction. It's a thinking invitation. It's an opportunity. It's a foundation for your learners to be able to go and explore. Now, tasking is supported by so much research out there. I read something from the Education Endowment Fund today. But of course, as regular listeners, regular subscribers to my content will know, I'm heavily influenced by the work of Barrett Rosenshine. And both that article I read today and Rosenshine, they really value the sense of explicitness. So in my instruction, I'm going to have no grey area. I will be explicit to you so that there is no guessing what the purpose of the task that I've set you is. That well-designed instruction requires mainly 3 components. The action, what are the learners going to be doing? What are those hockey players, netballers, footballers going to be doing? What will success look like? Number 2, so that's the outcome. What is that going to look like when it's successful? And 3, what's the rationale? Why does it matter whether or not I play that pass into the midfielder's back foot? What's the purpose? What you want me to play it to their back foot? What would that look like? It looks like this. What's the rationale? Well, obviously, it's that they can then easily take that on the half turn, break the lines, and go the other way. But I need to design for that within my task orientation. So in a classroom, that might look like, if I'm in a biology classroom, I'd say, write a paragraph summarizing how oxygen moves through the body. Focus on the clarity of your description, because next we're going to compare it with the movement of CO2. That could be in a biology or a sports science classroom. The point being, I am setting a task that explicit thought and processing, and being explicit in what it is I'm looking for can be married up, certainly in a classroom, to the expectations on the learners on how they would respond to an exam question, for example. The rationale then is not a throwaway, but it actually anchors the meaning and the purpose of the task. I remember from my school days, and this is a really common rhetoric where people go, oh, what's the point in that? That usually from sorry maths teachers, maths enthusiasts, that you would say, oh, what was the point in me ever doing that? Why did I need to know what Pythagoras' theorem was? Well, anchoring the rationale and the meaning behind that. How often are you going to actually look at objects in your life and think about how to, I don't know, measure their perimeter, whatever it is? You're signaling the purpose and meaning of the task. So it's not just arbitrary, but there is a necessity towards the understanding. Thirdly, set time limits because they shape urgency and flow to your lesson, to your instruction, to your coaching session. By focusing attention, you can really create momentum. And that momentum and sense of urgency is absolutely translated towards deeper encoding of learning in that moment. Memory can drift without a sense of urgency. So tasks sort of sprawl and become elongated. That lack of urgency in the learners sort of leads to a lack of energy towards any progress. Effective use of time limits is about leveraging pressure. It's about creating a sense of tempo or eustress, the positive version of the far more superiorly discussed stress in a negative connotation. Eustress is positive. It's about putting a desirable level of difficulty on the learning or on the movement pattern that you're looking at in your coaching session. A well-set time frame can really support this, and it turns learning into more of a challenge. You've got 90 seconds to plan, and then we're going to compare. I'm setting a time limit on the board, just going to use my interactive whiteboard, put a 5-minute timer on that. Let's go. Welcome to class, everybody. As you know, you're going to be sitting your GCSE in a few weeks. You're going to have no more than 10 minutes to plan and mark a 6-mark question. And bang, there's one on the board. Off you go, 10 minutes, tick tock. Inviting a sense of intensity and immediacy in your task orientation highlights the fact that time-bound tasks improve engagement. They create focus and purpose in the task orientation that you've set. Therefore, the boundaries that you've created for effort are pretty straightforward. You've only got this amount of time to do this thing. You're either going to do it or you're not. And if you don't do it, you're going to suffer the kind of sense of self-awareness or comparison to others that you haven't finished it. The brain thrives under that moderate, safe level of challenge and urgency because in creating that environment, the brain wants to support the learner, wants to try and draw down from the long-term memory, wants to try and apply learning in new contexts to be able to be successful in this setting. So the skill really is balancing pace with precision, adjusting the timeframes to both stretch learners but also not frustrate them because you've overburdened them. So it's all about trying to meet that stretch zone. We don't want learners in comfort all of the time, but we also don't want to overburden them, batter their working memory, and create a sense of learned helplessness. Then we have the prompt towards attention, the moment that reclaims focus in your learners. They're like micro interventions in a sense. And in any coaching session, you're going to go from warm up to technical development, small-sided game, possession-based drill, small-sided game with more of a competitive element, possibly some pitch-based orientation. There are so many micro elements to a coaching session or a lesson that having those little interventions is really important. This is particularly pertinent in longer lessons. So this might be a lecture in a university environment or a double lesson, or if you teach in a school that still uses a kind of more traditional format with sort of anything between 50 to 60 minutes worth lessons, only 5 a day, 6 a day, then those micro interventions are essential because you can so easily allow your learner's attention to drift, the flow and urgency of the lesson to drift. By having a crafted signal, you can draw focus back without breaking flow. And that is the key thing. We do not want to break flow. Yes, we need to have ebbs and peaks and troughs, if you like, within any lesson or coaching session, because everyone needs their small brain break to consolidate, to connect with others, to share ideas. But there's a real art to being firm in that fluidity. Prompts can be anything from physical, so a simple raised hand, a pursed lips, Other instructors, colleagues might use something like a countdown. I'm not a big fan of a countdown because ultimately I think this both from a coaching perspective but also a parental perspective. If my countdown doesn't work, I'm sort of there, I'm buggered, and that doesn't look great for my authority in the classroom. But it works for some people. Others might be a verbal cue. So not a question, just a straight up cue. Paul, eyes on me. And then we wait. And that is the key, isn't it? That we wait and continue to rabbit on over the top of people, over the top of learners, over the top of those in our coaching session. Because in rabbiting or whittering over the top of them, what we're doing is signaling the lack of authority that you have as the instructor. I'm going to give an instruction. I'm going to give it once firmly, maybe twice, and then I am going to wait. Or possibly even an environmental pause can just, if you have enough attention from your group, the respect rapport is there, then even doing something as simple as pausing for effect can be super powerful. The most effective style of attentional prompt are ones which are layered with a sense of presence, tone, pace, posture. They all matter when it comes to attentional cues. But attention prompts work when it's established as part of the culture of your classroom, culture of your coaching style. There is an expectation from learners that you are going to be the one that is puppeteering the whole group, the learning environment at all times. It's about learning culture rather than corrective culture or authoritarian culture. Learners really will interpret your attentional commands as some kind of a reminder about what is about to happen matters. I need you to listen because I care about you and I want you to learn, rather than a reprimand or an us versus them. So there we have the first 4 of 8 of the big 8 elements that define expectation setting within your learning environment. What we're talking about here is the malleability and the connectivity between all of those 8 as a way of regulating attention, shaping and maintaining a sense of cognizance around working memory, and making sure that we reduce levels of overburdening, levels of uncertainty. But in actual fact, by maintaining a really rigid set of expectations in your instruction as a coach or as a teacher, what you're really doing is you're demonstrating the care that you have for your pupils or for your learners or for your athletes, because you're taking away any sense of ambiguity. When you get here, this is what's going to happen, because I need you to focus on your thinking, on your technical performance, on your strategic performance, on your application of the skills that are being developed. That sense of predictability, it doesn't kill spontaneity, it doesn't kill creativity. It's an enabler. Because I'm taking away things that could be threats within your working memory, creating psychological safety because you know what to expect when you arrive, I'm actually enabling, facilitating, giving the opportunity for more creativity, for more spontaneity. Because a well-structured environment is one in which curiosity can thrive because we're not in chaos.